Welcome to Advantage. I'm your host, David Young, and I am glad that you're listening today. It's summer, as you know, and we're all busy, and I particularly have been swamped, so I haven't done a podcast in a few weeks. You all know that I run an educational, regional, cooperative, or service agency. And so a big part of what we do is training in the summer. We do some training in schools and districts, and we have some here at our offices. And so we have been busy. It's been great, but it's just been a busy summer. So we also last week had our first staff retreat ever, and it was awesome. And I actually have a tie-in when I get to introduce my guest for today. You'll hear a little bit more about our retreat and how that played into today's episode. But before we get there, I want to start by saying that I've missed you all, and I'm glad that you're back today. We have a great podcast. So today we're going to do something that we probably all of us don't do often enough. We're going to have a little fun, and fun is well, it's fun and it's worth it just because of that. But did you realize that having a little fun can actually have a strategic ripple effect on you and your organization? That's right. It's engaging. It's a stress reliever. It's a gateway to innovation. It can be empowering to your staff, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe most importantly, it makes us as leaders do something that I know for sure we don't do often enough, and that is to celebrate. Now, we know that it's important to celebrate our collective accomplishments as a staff, even though we do struggle sometimes to make ourselves make time for that. When it comes to celebrating, it's also important just to celebrate each other as individuals, as colleagues, as friends. And so that's part of what we're going to talk about today, plus a lot more. So with that, let me introduce you to our guest. I'm joined today by Brian Buffington of the Pioneer RESA. That is RESA, or the Pioneer Regional Educational Service Agency. So I mentioned that I run a regional cooperative. That's a service agency in Georgia, Northeast Georgia, where Brian is from. Those are called RESAs. Now, you may wonder, how in the world did David get a guy who works at an educational service agency in Georgia on the podcast, and why did I choose to do that? Well, Brian wouldn't tell you this himself, but I and lots of other people think Brian is a pretty big deal. And so let me tell you a little bit more about him. He first has a passion for helping students and spotlighting staff members in schools and districts who help students in amazing ways. But in addition to his regular job at the Pioneer RESA, he travels all over North America, working with different organizations like mine at CKEC. He was at our retreat last week, and I'll tell you more about that in a second. But he also has a website. He does a podcast. He has a passion for T-shirts and stickers and other merchandise like that. He has CDs with songs that he's written, and he has a weekly newsletter that goes out to thousands of subscribers. So, I'm bragging on him, but he's super humble about it. He's just trying to help people in education and trying to help people in general. It's one of the things that I really admire about him. So with that, here's the quick backstory about how, we came to today's episode. Last year, my leadership team here at CKEC went to the national conference for education service agencies. It's called AESA. While we were there, two of my team members went to a breakout session called Buff Nuggets. Yeah, that's right. Buff, B-U-F-F, nuggets, like chicken nuggets, Buff Nuggets. When they came back, they could not quit talking about this guy named Brian Buffington, who sang and played the guitar, talked about branding your organization. He talked about taking care of others. He used a ton of really cool tech tools and lots of other things, all in like an hour and 15 minutes. So what we did, our leadership team, we did what all good educators do. We started to stalk Brian. We looked him up we Googled him. We went to some other sessions that he had at AESA. And then we also joined his weekly newsletter called Buff Nuggets, which allowed us over the next few months to really kind of get to know him a little bit better through seeing his content. So months later, we decided we were going to have our first staff retreat ever. And we wanted to bring somebody in from an outside organization to provide us with some perspective and some new learning. And Brian was the very first person that we thought of. So he graciously agreed to attend. That retreat happened last week, and we got a ton of great information. We all left energized and ready to use some of those, excuse me, ready to use some of those tools that we learned about almost immediately in our jobs, and we also tools that we could share with our schools and districts. So you all know me by now. Of course, I asked him to be on the podcast. I was not going to I wasn't going to miss an opportunity to give Advantage a shameless plug, and he agreed to be on. So I'm really looking forward to talking with Brian today. So with that, Brian Buffington, welcome to Advantage, and thank you for joining me today.
Come on now, David. It's good to be here. Thank you so much. You said many, many nice things. I think you said I was super humble in here. I'm just going to say just regular humble.
Just like the normal version of humble.
Just a normal version. I would say the good pride. I'm proud of a lot of those things you talked about, but not that bad pride in the Bible. Like I don't want that.
No, you don't need that pride.
I don't need that one. But man, your staff. I was just telling a friend today about just the fact that you invited me to dinner. We had this. I ate some kind of chicken that was covered in candy. It felt like this tavern that was around when time began. And then we walked over to this. They called it the watering hole, and we had this great camaraderie with staff, your staff there. And then they just started singing, and there was dancing. David, how do you make this happen? That's not normal.
And listen, we have hired well. We have a great group of people here. Give ourselves a shameless plug. It is a great staff. I'm glad you had that impression. We love to eat. And so, of course, we went to and by the way, we'll give Bardstown, Kentucky a shameless plug here as well. Man, what a great place to visit. Has a awesome little downtown area. We went to the Old Talbot Tavern, which you're right, was as old as it could be. And man, the food was so good. I particularly liked the bread pudding that we got at the end. And
it was good.
And then we walk around and you're right. We go into this little bar that's got live music. There's some guy there that looks and sounds like Luke Combs singing.
Oh, he was so good. And he was so kind. He let me play a couple of my songs. And that's really part of what I do. Like my job when I go see people is I want people to feel comfortable. I want to showcase vulnerability because I think that opens up doors. And that's exactly that you were providing. You're providing an outlet for that to happen at your retreat. So kudos to you guys. That's not normal. I don't see a lot of retreats like that for co-ops in the nation or in my state.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. We had a great time. And then of course the next day we spent the day with you learning from you. And we really did as a staff. We came and so our podcast, we have a lot of listeners who are school and district leaders. We have some business leaders and others outside education. So just let me tell you, in my career, that's the first retreat I've ever been on, and just happened to get to help be a part of leading this one and organizing it. But I'd really never done a retreat before, and I highly recommend it. It was good for our staff to get away. It was only 2 days and one night, and we were only about an hour and a half away from home, but we were in a different location, and the networking and connections and planning that we were able to do for this coming year, it was good. It was time well spent.
It was enough. I thought 1 night, 2 days, a lot can happen.
Yep.
Yeah, I made lots of great relationships. We have some social media following back and forth with some of your folks. And I look forward to learning more about them taking some ideas and putting them in action.
Sounds good, man. Hey, listen, so I gave a little background about you. Anything else you want to add for our listeners to give them a little context?
Sure. Well, if you're listening, you may not know that I wrote the hit song 8th Grade Mustache. And the reason you may not know is because it's not actually a hit song, but I did write it, and I wrote that song along with a song called Cheese. It's about my favorite food group. It is to me, it actually is its own food group.
Sure.
Swiss cheese is my favorite. I So not only do I write music, I call it happy music for the masses.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you what, David, I never thought that when I started this professional development thing, that professional word got in the way. In my mind, I thought professional looked a certain way. I was
Hmm.
like, there's no way I could bring these songs into my sessions. This is like I'm bringing a guitar. Like these people, they want professional. Whatever in your mind, that's what they want. But you know what I found out is that people get upset when I don't bring the guitar.
Yeah.
They're like, why didn't you bring the guitar? And also the thing with the music is if there's ever a birthday in the house, and sometimes I miss some of them because some people don't tell me. I will sing happy birthday, have my own special birthday song.
Yep.
And I will get on a chair and I will make a big scene and make that person's face turn very red. And they will never forget it.
No.
And I take pride in that. So that's a little bit of me. I love playing music, and I do bring it into my world, leading and working with educators and leaders. Um, I live here in Northeast Georgia. I'm near Helen, Georgia, which is like this tourist town type
Mhm.
thing. I'm really close to the Cabbage Patch Hospital, where those babies are born.
Really?
Yeah. If you've ever been to the hospital, it's kind of interesting and creepy. They have babies' heads sticking out of the dirt, and then like the woman or male picks up the baby out of the dirt, and it's like here's a fresh baby. What do you want to name the baby? And then it's this whole they think it's cute. I think it's kind of like horrific, really.
Yeah,
Bad dreams.
different.
Could you imagine like a horror film based on babies coming out of the ground?
Like growing in the garden.
Growing babies' heads growing in the garden. Let's not. We don't want to go. We're not. We
Oh.
don't want that in your podcast, David. This is about joy and fun. Let's not do that.
And you were telling us the other day, Northeast Georgia, you're kind of in the Appalachian Mountains, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of area. Blue Ridge, is it around
I
Blue
mean,
Mountains?
I think our grass isn't as blue as your grass in Kentucky,
Hmm.
but it's we there's Blue Ridge, Georgia.
Hmm.
There, that's about an hour. I do work with the school system there in Blue Ridge. That's about an hour and a half
Hmm.
hour and a half northwest, depending how fast you drive. But I am I don't know, 20-minute drive from the Appalachian Trail. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. We're about 5-10 degrees cooler than Atlanta most times of the year.
Yep.
It's a wonderful place to be.
Sounds like it. Well, so let me ask a little bit about your journey. I believe, well, I know you have a specialty when it comes to tech tools.
Mhm.
And I think maybe that was what got you sort of motivated to work with adults and to, I know you used to teach, so you work directly with kids, but then there's also a passion for working with adults who then can help kids and making their life uh, simpler, but also their teaching more effective. So, question number one is, am I right about that? And then question number two, what made you motivated to kind of take a deeper dive into that realm?
You're very right. Now, and I didn't share this with your group. I'll make one addition there, and that is, I never had really planned to be a teacher, an
Hmm.
educator, and I was always, and you know this a little bit about me too, because I really think it's important that we tell our stories, and um, that I was really into making T-shirts. I was like, I'm going to be a T-shirt maker. I'm going to be a business person. I love business. I couldn't pass those high-level math classes in college. By the way, everybody had to go to college when I was in high school. It's like if you're going to be somebody, you have to go to college. And
Yeah,
I'm so glad that narrative has changed
me too.
since then. But I couldn't do that. I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a music major because I play three chords on the guitar and I play at church. And I learned that I couldn't actually pass the ear training. So I'm in college. It's getting very expensive. It's getting very expensive. I got the loans. And then I'm like, you know what? I really enjoyed my middle school experience, and I am married and we are young. I have to get a degree, and I will teach middle school. And that's how I got into middle school teaching. And I taught science right there in South Georgia in a town called Valdosta.
Oh yeah.
And My first experience with technology was when a principal had allowed empowered me and said, Brian, we have some funds. What is something you'd like to do with tech? Because that principal knew his name was Marty Rush. And he says, what would you like to buy? And I bought these science probes. And then
Mhm.
we could capture, light. We can capture pH balance, velocity, speed, all these different things. It made these labs, these processes just more meaningful to my students. We got to plug those up to these dinosaur computers, 4 inches thick, and they got to see the data. They got to see the graphs, and it's like, you know what? They're like the numbers, the data, the graphs. This isn't theory. This is practical. And I
Yeah.
was like, I love this. And so I became the tech guy. Every school has that person.
Yep.
And it's like something breaks, and I'm not very good at the stuff that breaks. I'm the guy who people come to say, Brian, I need a new solution. I need an idea. And I became that person. I began to train adults. I was like, you know what? I really like this working with adults. Someone, and I got great feedback. People are like, you know what? That Brian guy, he's not bad. I like working with him. And I thought that was a high compliment.
Sure.
That Brian guy, he's not bad. And so I furthered my education. I got a master's degree in instructional technology and found out about co-ops. We call them Reese's in Georgia. We have co-ops in Kentucky. They call them BOCES, I think in Colorado. They're named different things, but we're all these agencies that really just provide, I think, tons of value, that have the ability to provide tons of value to member districts. We share services. That's really the best way to say it.
Yeah.
We share services, we share ideas, we give lots of value to our member districts. And so I work at one in Northeast Georgia, and it's been awesome.
Yeah. I talk to my staff a lot, about cooperatives, regional service agencies, really the power in having these regional hubs throughout the state who can do just unbelievable things for the school districts in their region, whether that's training or whether that's cost savings or whether that is legislative work or whatever that is, just to be an advocate and a leader and a support system. Our mission really is to try to meet every district exactly where they are and help them get to wherever it is that they want to go. Whether we have it, a lot of times we have the expertise to do that, but if not, we can bring it in. And then the other co-op directors and I talk often about whenever we all can get on the same page, moving in the same direction, you really can have a statewide impact, even though you're having a regional approach. So that's kind of our little catchphrase: a regional approach with a statewide impact. Co-ops are perfectly situated to have a huge impact across the whole state.
I agree. And, most of my districts are very small to medium, and most of them cannot afford their own educational technology specialist.
Yep.
And so I like to be helpful. Let me just say this. I like to be helpful. And so
Mhm.
there's always tons of work to be done, David. I think there was one time when I was new to the job, as part of my story, I was waiting for the phone to ring,
Mhm.
um, because I didn't understand how the co-ops work. I was young,
Yeah.
naive, and really started to have a lot more fun when I was proactive. And I started coming up with creative solutions and marketing the solutions to those districts, and then became very, very busy.
I would say so. Um, so let's talk a little bit about Marty Rush, your principal. I want to make a point quickly. He was your principal, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
He's, yeah, he was my when I did student teaching. He was the
yeah,
principal at that school. He
yeah,
couldn't hire me right off the bat. I was a mid-year graduate,
yep,
but I had to work somewhere else for 6 months.
yep.
But he did hire me back for the next school year. So keep
Well,
going, keep going. I just had to
I,
give that little tidbit.
I just want to give him a shout out because he did one small leadership oriented thing there. I'm sure he was a great leader beyond this, but he did that one little thing. He saw potential in you. He had some money, and you can do this in a million different ways. But in his case, he had some money. He went to you and said, "Hey, I've got some money. I'm going to give you. I'm basically giving you a blank check to do something awesome." and I'm going to trust you to be able to do something awesome in that way. And then what you did has ended up taking you on a trajectory for your whole career.
One thing, David, just one person
Yeah.
with one belief in me did that. And I know you work with leaders, you work with districts, and we have to have our eyes open. And not everybody's not the same. But if you see people and you're like, this person's different, they have potential. And I do believe everybody has potential, but some of us were meant for different things.
Yeah.
And he said, this guy, he looks like he could do something with tech, and it did. And I see him. I actually see him, maybe once every couple of years at a conference here in Georgia, and he's just a great guy.
Yeah. It's just like when you're a teacher, you never know when the thing that you're going to say to a student is going to make a difference in their life. And it's the same way when you're a school leader or a district leader. You never know when you work with that one staff member that has potential, and you give them a little encouragement, or you give them a little empowerment, or you give them some funding and some trust. You just don't ever know when it's going to unlock potential that you felt like you saw it in that person, but then it just unlocks it and makes a huge difference for them and for the people around them.
Yeah. And a lot of people, and my role is really interesting because I go to schools, I go to districts, and sometimes the leaders don't see the thing in that person.
Yeah.
Because leaders are very busy, and who knows what's going on in their minds.
Mm-hmm.
But I see it, and that is one of my number one top three. I mean, I don't have a list, but it's up there pretty high. Top three favorite things to do is to showcase and make someone else feel like a rock star, and help them on their way.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you about that. So let's dig into that a little bit. So I know that something that's near and dear to your heart is celebrating others, seeing those things that you can shine a spotlight on, making them feel like a superstar as often as possible, and all the benefits that come from that. So, can you talk? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we have these people. They're around us, and I think in education right now, it's just so tough.
Mm-hmm.
It is very difficult. You look at enrollment numbers and people who want to become teachers nationwide, the pipeline is shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if y'all have got similar numbers in Kentucky.
Totally. Yes, for sure.
Okay. And my thought is, why are we not putting lots more effort into keeping these people around? Because we're actually losing some great teachers because they don't feel appreciated. They don't feel seen. And I don't mean you have to go give them a car or a parking spot. Most of them don't operate on that anyways.
No.
And yes, I would like for them to get paid more. That would be awesome. But if you can't pay them more, do the next best thing, and next best thing. That's just to make them feel valued.
Yeah.
In any way you can. And that is, it could be words. There's people who are just different. Some people just they're hungry for different things. And sometimes words are enough for some people.
Yeah.
Action followed up with words is mighty awesome. Letting them know that you appreciate them through some kind of action or gift. But we have work to do, David. It's almost like, the principal to-do list.
Yep.
The admin to-do list. There's lots of things on there, right?
Yep.
Well, what if like number 1 or 2 was recognize and make my people feel awesome?
Yeah.
I hope that's allowed.
Yes, it is. And, we talked earlier about when you recognize something fabulous that somebody's doing, a gift that they have, or an action that they've taken, or, an initiative that they're leading, whatever it is, if somebody's knocking it out of the park and you can take time to praise that, it really does have a ripple effect. I've never seen anybody not work as hard tomorrow because they were praised today. Nobody really gets praised today and thinks, all right, I can take the day off tomorrow. If you get praised today, you are going to come back tomorrow and that energy level is going to go up. So you're going to do a better job. It's probably going to have a lasting effect on the way you view your job. In the school world, now you're benefiting kids. You're probably being more connected with them and their families. And then equally important, you mentioned the teacher shortage, and we're dealing with that everywhere. The more teachers that we can have in our buildings who feel great about the job that they're doing and the way that they're being supported and the way they can be empowered, they're projecting that positivity to the students in their classroom who we hope will choose to be teachers. uh, you know we all of us who got into education uh, probably had we had teachers that were living their best life, and we were looking at them like, maybe that's not a bad career choice. I see Miss So and So, she's happy coming to school every day. She seems like she has what she needs. She's got a mission in life and she's living it out through her job. Like, that's I think I might do that. So we have to do that. Say, if we want the teacher pipeline to fill back up, you know, young people have to see it as a viable option where they can live a great life. And sometimes our praise can kind of start that chain reaction.
And it can't be just lip service. And I think we need better storytellers out there who are recruiting and in that process. But I don't want to make, I don't want to make a facade of, you know, come here, everything's gonna be awesome. Like we need to fix that. We need to fix it and then have the pipeline open up, because I don't want the pipeline to open up and they just get there and it's the same old mess.
No, right. Yeah, I agree. I agree. All right. So last week when you were with us at the retreat, I want to talk about this whole concept of fans first. You talked about fans first, taking a fans first, like fans at a sporting event, taking
Mm-hmm.
a fans first approach to working with schools and districts. So I just love that concept. Honestly, it kind of convicted me. I thought back when I was, because it's kind of a play on customer service, but it's got a little different twist to it. And I thought, man, I wish back when I was a principal that I would have thought about that whole mindset of fans first, and how would I have operated a little bit differently if I had had that mentality. So, can you elaborate a little bit on fans first, and just your ideas on how that can impact a school and a community?
Yeah, I'd love to. As educators, we were never formally trained in some of these concepts.
Right.
Customer service. We don't normally look at students, our staff, our community members as customers, but they are. Okay. Especially in 2023.
Yep.
Some of them have more options than ever. And we're not formally trained in how to treat them, how to retain them. Um, and I grabbed this term from someone I look up to. His name is Jesse Cole. He's the owner of the Savannah Bananas, and he has a book, and he's very upfront about his organization. He says we take care of our fans, they take care of us. And I gave the example of at a recent game, and you could check it out if you're on Instagram. You go look up Savannah Bananas or Jesse Cole. I can't remember the count, but it was a rain out game where it rained for like rained for an hour. They started playing again. It rained out again. It's just miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And as people were exiting, there was a parent, a lady with her two children. They're walking out to the car. It's still raining, and Jesse noticed that one of his players was walking them to the car with an umbrella. Now, I'm near Atlanta. We're really proud of the Braves. They're
Yep.
knocking it out the park, like for real, like lots of home runs.
Yeah.
But they're not doing this, and they don't have to, because people just come anyways.
Yep.
People are coming anyways. But let me tell you, the Savannah Bananas is not the Atlanta Braves. That is a collegiate summer travel ball league. They sell out every game.
Yeah.
And there's something to say there about our organizations, our schools, our co-ops, our school districts, about how we treat people and how we let them know that they're number one. They we still have some people who who may take advantage of us or do wrong to us, but overall, like we are going to make people feel like they are number one. We're so glad you're here. Students are coming in the halls. Boom. We're so glad you're here. I saw, there's a principal who has kids playing drums in the hallway. Like I'm talking like a drum set, elementary school. That sounds horrific to half the teachers out there. They're like, there's no way they would want that. But kids are coming in. They're feeling like there's lively. It's just that spirit, that culture. Here's the other thing. And I was trying to figure out how this translates to us. But you ever been to a ball game, David? And they you buy the ticket. For one, if you go to NFL game, those are expensive. Those are, $80 a ticket, $100 a ticket. Then you go in, you're like, man, I'm thirsty. Well, that's gonna be another $20.
Yep.
Or I want a burger. This is another $50. I mean, it's so expensive to take your family to these events. Jesse Cole, Savannah Bananas, he said, you know what? People come in, they pay their ticket, and I forgot the ticket might be $25, $30. I don't know what it is. But he said, I'm tired of dads and moms feeling like cheapskates.
Mm.
He goes, everything's included. The burgers, the dogs, the sodas with your ticket.
Wow.
How do we create that type of, you just said the word, wow.
Yeah.
How do we create that for our parents, our students, our staff, where it's above and beyond?
I love that. Yeah, that's as soon as you said it, I thought, man, what is the school equivalent of that?
Hmm.
How do you take that and translate that over to the experience not only a student has, but the experience that the student's family has as well? That's a challenge. I mean, we could have a think tank session. I'd love to be part of a think tank session on that to try to figure out what we can do to make those types of things happen. Because I think it's important. It's like you said a minute ago. I mean, it's I guess businesses maybe are like this to some extent, but school districts are really like this. We're all sort of competing against each other, but then we're also trying to collaborate and help each other for the overall good. And it's a delicate balance that we walk there. But certainly the first part is, students have more choices now. I don't know, in Georgia, you guys, I think you guys have charter schools. Do you have
We do have some charter schools. We have a virtual school.
Yeah.
Our people have options.
Yeah. So, in Kentucky, we just began having open enrollment where students didn't have to necessarily go to school within their district boundaries. They could kind of go wherever they want as long as they can get there. That's been a whole new thing. A charter school law passed a few years ago. We haven't had a charter school open yet, but that day's coming. And so this whole fans first, customer service, how can we go above and beyond for you? Really, it's something that's in our hearts anyway. We love kids and we love their families. We want to do those types of things. But now the seismic plates are shifting a little bit to where there's a little bit more pressure for us to figure those things out too.
Yeah, David, I think in the past we just assumed people just had to come to school, so we didn't have to try hard.
Yeah.
Right. We have a built-in audience. People are coming.
Where else they got to come here.
We could feed you the most awful food every day, and you still have to come.
Yep.
That mentality was wrong.
Mm-hmm. True.
And here we are. And I do like free market principles where it does make us better. There are some good things to that where we know what we do have to compete some.
Yeah.
And some healthy competition.
Yeah. And healthy. That's the thing. We do talk about competition a lot on this podcast. And, the thing about being competitive in a school environment is as long as your intentions are pure, there's nothing wrong with being competitive. And your intentions being pure means I'm being competitive in order to do great things for kids. And mm-hmm. So if I'm competing, even if I'm competing against myself just to try to hold myself to a high standard, to do unbelievable things for kids that we've never done before, or even technically if I'm competing against the neighboring district because I'm trying to do unbelievable things for kids, it's all going to work out because the neighboring district next door at some point is going to go, well, you know what? I'm going to have to do some of these things. You talk about free market principles. They're going to look over and go, wow, look at what they're doing over there. And, we're going to have to get in the game here and do some of these things. which ultimately benefits kids as well. So
There you go. That's what we want. It's all about the kids.
yeah, competition's fine as long as in a school environment, as long as it's about bettering the lives of kids and their families. So let's talk a little bit. You mentioned, yeah, you sing, you write music, you do tons of creative things, and you're big on kind of having fun and the impact that fun can have on the overall organization, whether that's a school or district or a business or whatever it is. So, can you talk a little bit about the concept of instilling fun and how it can be a powerful force, like within our profession?
Yeah, that's my favorite F word is fun.
Mine too.
you know, um,
Maybe food. I don't know.
food.
Food
Yeah,
and
that's
fun.
close. That's close second.
Yeah.
You know, I mentioned it earlier, but I didn't know fun and professionalism could coexist.
Right.
When I started this job, I was like, teachers, they come in these trainings, just give me what I need to know and get me out of here.
Mhm.
Well, if that's really all I'm doing, then just go to YouTube and do that. Just go ask Chat GPT or Google, whatever your choice is. And so I my number one task. So people develop trainings differently. I, I kind of think of mine like a set list of a band.
Yeah.
Some bands they just put their songs on there and they say this is the order I'm going to do the songs and they play the songs. Well, when I do house concerts, it's really important that there are these different parts of the set that involves the crowd.
Mhm.
Like here's the place where you do the ooh-ahs. Or you sing Gulf of Mexico. Whoa. You sing that with me. David, I heard you singing. It's
I
like
sang that one. I did.
sing great. Or we do the catfish dance or whatever, all these different parts. Because if we're humans and we're in the same room together, and I hope we're in the room together as much as possible. I know we're doing this virtually and there's
Yeah.
great virtual options out there. But I want to be with people if I can.
Yep.
That if you have humans in the room together, it needs to be pleasant. It needs to be fun. I said it out loud. I'm going to say it. It needs to be fun. And you don't have to, and if you're listening to this and you're like, well, Brian, I'm not you. I don't do those things. You need to make your own fun.
Yep.
You need to make your own fun. And here's the thing. My very first job, when I create a session, I don't start with the content. I start with the production.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
because the content, I can grab that anywhere. Like it's about how do I deliver the content and how do I get people involved with it? And because here's the thing, as soon as possible, what I want to do is I want to break down every wall like Jericho up in that room, up
Mhm.
on that Zoom. I want to break down every wall because I want people taking chances. I want them to be vulnerable and I want some authentic learning happening in sessions and in schools.
Yeah.
Because when we're a little too uptight, it prevents learning. People don't feel safe. They feel like they might get ridiculed. And that right there is the demise of any kind of education. And it happens in classrooms. It happens all kinds of settings where people don't have the freedom to have fun. And that's me, man. I was preaching there for a second, David. I don't know if you heard that.
I love it. I did hear it, and it made me. I'm going to get all theoretical now. Let's go down to the student level. So there's actually some brain research, not just for students, but all of us. We learn better when the learning is episodic, where it's an episode, it's a happening, like something happened. If you do much research into like cooperative learning and students getting up and mixing and grouping in different ways and working together, part of the reason all that works so well is because you're making the learning episodic. It's something that happened. It's not just a student sitting and listening and trying to take in information and retain it. Well, I think sometimes as leaders, we don't realize that when we're working with the adults who are our part of our staff, it's the same thing, right? It's we all learn better when something's episodic. And so when you make something fun, when you have your set list, you're really sprinkling little events, little episodes throughout the set, which is what makes the information stick. It's what makes us, even in our brains, it's how we learn, and it's what allows us to retain that and use that information in different settings. So it makes total sense, even from a scientific standpoint as well, why infusing those fun uh, events, those sprinkling that in, why that has a
And
big impact.
David, I hope you got to see that. You got to see some of that formula, and I haven't perfected the formula or the set list, but it is my number one attempt
Yeah,
when I go work with people, and you got to see it at your retreat. Um, it's really like I have 5 or 10 activities that some of them are short, 2 or 3 seconds. Excuse me, 2 or 3 minutes. Someone might come up, and I make a animated GIF out of them. Well, that's comical. People start laughing, and I think I had 2 or 3 people make something that day.
oh, you
Back
did.
there.
They did. They sure did.
Um,
Before the day was out, they had learned that skill, and because they wanted to duplicate what you had just shown the group. So
mhm.
yes, I definitely saw that day.
So I think if we could just reprogram, is like, I've got, if you got a whole day with a bunch of people, you've got to have a lot of activities. You got to have a lot of these little things. But if you have 1 hour with a group of people, first off, you think of, how can I make this fun? How can I, you said the term episodic. Um, how can I create these mini episodes
Yep.
to help people remember?
Yep. And it has. We've been talking about ripple effects. That has ripple effects as well. I mean, there are all the social emotional aspects of that as well. If I'm having fun and I feel like I'm in a safe environment where I can take risks and I can, fail forward, and I feel good about coming to work every day, and so it helps my family life and it helps my own mental health. There's just so much that goes into that. So as leaders, us just being more intentional about infusing some episodic fun into our work with adults, and if we're a school administrator or whatever, our work with kids when we're in the school as well. It's just something that we get so busy and there's a lot of pressure, and we just don't think about stopping to intentionally do some of those things. But I just think it's so important.
And talking to school administrators, it's not just about giving permission to have fun. It's about expecting it, and it's
Mhm.
about modeling it. you
Yes.
know Someone could talk about, we want these interactive experiences, we want students up, and then they come to professional development that should have been an email. They come to a meeting.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
And it's like, why am I here? And it's like, it just puts a bad taste in your mouth.
It does. It does. No doubt about it. All right. So we're starting to kind of come down the home stretch here. So as we wrap up, are there any other things that we haven't talked about today? We're talking to school leaders, district leaders, business leaders, folks in education, just in general. Anything we haven't talked about today that you just really want to make sure that they hear before we sign off in a few minutes?
I would not turn a deaf ear to the idea of AI in education.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I'm cautious. I'm optimistically cautious about that use. Similar things have happened throughout our history with the invention of books, the printing press, uh,
Calculator,
the calculator, the watch. I mean,
the
phones,
iPhone. Yeah.
and we could possibly be putting our students and faculty at a disadvantage by not having access or properly trained how to use these tools. A lot of us when social media came, was like, this is going to be the devil and the death of us all. And I don't think we did as a society, we did not do a great job of being the model of how to use this tech. We just said, it's going to be what it is. And like students, they're not going to do it. They're totally doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But same thing with AI. What if schools took the initiative on on showing students how to properly use this to make bigger and better things, to enhance writing. Because at least in our country, most people have access to the high speed connection to the world. I mean, through the internet, and even with a $10 phone from Walmart, I mean, they can still access these tools. So I would be thinking about those things, and maybe it's way down your list, but you might want to crank it up just a couple notches on your list, because it is huge. It's the I'll say it's the biggest thing since the iPhone came out in 2007.
I agree with you. And I think, and I will say, to give at least in this region, when Chat GPT, literally the week that it came out, I heard, several in education saying, we're going to ban it. We're not going to allow students to use it. Students are not going to know how to write anymore. All of that was going on. And I thought, I was afraid that we were going to kind of do the normal resist, and then finally integrate, which is typically what we do with new things like that, disruptive innovation. We resist it, and then we eventually integrate it. But I'll say, since then, after a week or two, and kind of we started to get used to the idea, and then we saw how it just exploded. Like, it exploded into music, into art. Like, I really, even with the iPhone, I feel like AI is accelerating more quickly, maybe, than even the innovation that came with the iPhone.
Yeah.
And I feel like educators are starting to embrace it much more quickly than I thought we would.
Yeah, we have people using it right now to give them better ideas about accommodations for students with special needs. And it's not like, do this work for me. It is, help me. Here's what I know. How can I make this better?
Yeah. 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 It really, it's the ability to harness not just the information that I have, but really all the information that is out there. Now, I still have to curate it. I mean, I'm sure it'll get better and more specific and more accurate over time. For now, I still have to curate it, but at least it gives me a good launching point to do whatever it is that I need to do. And it's an extreme time saver. I can't imagine that it is not going to become more and more just kind of the way we operate when it comes to the work that we do.
And I just put it in Buff Nuggets, the newsletter yesterday. You can already play with it in your Google Docs and your Gmail. It'll just be integrated in all things we already do anyways.
Yep.
So
yeah, it is. I actually saw it in the newsletter yesterday. It was good.
Whoa, David, I'm going to have to check your stats. Let me check how many stars you have in the newsletter.
Check it, man. I'm reading it. I'm looking at it each week. Hey, so speaking of the newsletter, as we wrap up, Brian, how can our listeners learn more about you? How can they learn more about you and also learn more from you?
Hey, the best way to get value out of our relationship is to get on the Buff Nuggets newsletter, and you can be part of Buff Nuggets Nation with David and all his friends at Central Kentucky EC, and you can go to briankbuffington.com, and you'll see a subscribe button up there, and that's the best way, because that's I have some social media accounts I post things, but man, this is weekly, Tuesday, 9 a.m. East Coast, so Kentucky gets it first. And my Alaska friends, they have to get it 4 hours later.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the best way. And then if you like these kind of conversations, you like this kind of work, I love working in person at events with other co-ops, with schools, districts, talking about innovation and empowering people, in workshops on educational technology too. So that's how you do it, David.
That's great, man. Hey, I want to add clarity. Notice Brian said it's Brian K, the letter K, Brian K. Buffington.
Yeah.
When you look him up, because when I went home, I was bragging to my kids. I was like, we had this guy, Brian Buffington. He does these Buff Nuggets. And so my kids automatically started Googling him. They held up a picture. They were like, is this him? I went, that's not him. And so it was because they were looking up Brian Buffington, not Brian K. Buffington. So
Yeah, gotta
throw
get the K in there. Yeah, I was named after Brian Keith, famous actor back in the day. He was
nice. I know
dad
Brian.
in
Yeah,
the original Parent Trap. So
awesome. All right. So, man, thank you so much for joining me today.
David, this has been a pleasure. I'm glad we get to do a double take here. I just got to see you last week, and we just made it happen. So let's just make things happen now. Let's not push it down the calendar. So I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about your staff, your listeners, and I can't wait to see how you guys shake things up in Central Kentucky.
Sounds good, man. We appreciate it. Good luck to you as well. Okay, so that is going to do it for another episode of Advantage. Thanks again to Brian Buffington for joining us today, and thanks to our listeners as well. I hope you have a great week, and we will see you soon with a new episode. Take care.